first one, let's start it off with the big one today, and that is Jake McCabe and Sam Lafferty going to the Toronto Maple Leafs along with a pair of fifth-round picks, 2025 and 2026, from the Blackhawks to Toronto. And in return, the Blackhawks will, 2024 and 2025 on those picks going to Toronto. And then the return that the Blackhawks are getting back is a 2025 first-round pick and a 2026 second-round pick, along with forwards Joey Anderson and Pavel Gogolev. That first-round pick that the Hawks are getting back is top 10 protected, so it will slide to 2026 if that is top 10 in 2025. So, Ron, initial reaction to this trade?
Yeah, I think initial reaction off the beat is Kyle Davidson's busy. I think that was truthfully the initial reaction here, Johnny, because you look at it around the league and you see, all these GMs kind of starting to make moves. We were joking in our Blackhawks channel today that we're not going to have any trades to talk about at Four Feathers Tank Center at this pace because everything's happening a week out from the deadline. But I think at the trade itself, I think, the trade makes sense. And I think a lot of people have been sitting here kind of, from what I've seen on the old Bluebird app all afternoon, really just kind of bitching, Johnny, about more or less the fact that these picks are so far away. And, are the Hawks going to, do this or do that? Why are they wanting picks so far in the future? And Ben Pope actually shared a good quote from Kyle Davidson. And he actually noted, he said, look, we want to have picks kind of scattered throughout. You don't want to load up and have them all in one draft, because if that's the case, then you limit yourself, because you're limiting yourself to that prospect pool and that opportunity. Having these picks later down the road, Johnny, there's no reason that they necessarily have to use this Toronto first round pick for themselves. It might be used for a trade by 2025. You know what I mean? Like, this is them just loading up the cabinet for when things come along. It's like when your mom goes to the grocery store and she buys all this stuff and you go, why did you buy so much? But then you don't have to go grocery shopping for 3 weeks. Then you understand why, because you have options early in the week for week 1. And then you have options even all the way into week 3 in your cabinet and your cupboard, right, Johnny? So
I love that.
That's kind of the way you got to think about it. You always want to keep it loaded. You don't want to blow through all of your your capital.
You want to blow your load too early.
yeah, more or less. It's kind of the way to look at it. So ultimately, I like the trade. I really do. I've seen some different breakdowns from a couple different people, a couple of non-Blackhawks writers from The Athletic, read a bit about them grading the trade. And even from Steve Dangle, who is a noted Toronto Maple Leafs media person, I guess, for lack of a better term, content creator, whatever you want to call him. And everybody thinks it's a great trade for the Leafs, and I completely agree. But at the same time, I think everybody kind of sees what the trade is for the Hawks at this point in time. And I think everybody's on board and says, you know what, I think both teams got good value here. Obviously, there's been a lot of crazy trades just in general around the league, and I know that's a little foreshadowing for later in the episode. But overall, Johnny, in a nutshell, I'm a fan of the trade. There's certainly things to like about each piece that they got in return for two of our favorites in McCabe and Lafferty.
Right, and we'll get to McCabe and Lafferty in a little bit. But just talking about the return here, I agree, and I think that's good to have some context from Kyle Davidson. I really like your analogy there, Ron. I think that was a perfect way to put it. And I would, just say that it's, the Hawks now have 6 first-round picks in the next 3 years. They made 3 first-round selections last year. This prospect pool is going to be deep. Hat tip to Ben Pope for kind of outlining that, just giving some context to that. So that's where your mind's got to be if you're a Blackhawks fan, man. And I got to go back and to what we said on our, I want to say, opening night special. I think I've reiterated it on numerous episodes of the Four Feathers podcast here. And that's, if you're worried about the Blackhawks doing a little too much winning for your liking, like they're on a 5-game win streak now, right? Just wait until after the deadline, and that's when the real heavy tanking will start. I said that verbatim, and guess what? You lost one of your most reliable, rock-solid defenders, and we're going to miss Jake McCabe here at the Four Feathers podcast, watching him from up in the 300 level at the UC. But he was, one of those players that on such a terrible team, he still looked like a good defender. He was one of the only guys with a positive plus-minus rating. I know that's not the end-all, be-all in terms of determining a player's value, how good they are, but you can just watch Jake McCabe and know that he's going to be out there in high-pressure situations against.
And Johnny, I'm going to further back your argument here. He was a plus goals on ice player. He was actually on the ice for 51% of the Blackhawks goals this season, and only on for, I believe, 45% against. So yes, you might say, oh, the plus minus and it's a flawed statistic and this, that, and the other, but all the other underlying metrics, from the sake of grading him as a positive defender, he is a good defender on a bad team. And that's hard to do. And that is really, really hard to do. And that is something that, Toronto has really struggled with over the last couple of years, is having reliable defensive minded defensemen. Obviously, Morgan Riley, a great puck mover, at the top of that blue line, but they've struggled, and they lose guys like Jake Muzzin to injury, and some of their other notable losses on the blue line as well over the last few seasons, Johnny. And we've seen that as fans from afar come back and bite them in the ass on numerous occasions. So, like you said, they get one of the most reliable defenders in the NHL on a super friendly deal too, because the Blackhawks are eating half of his salary for the rest of his contract, which is 2 years beyond this season. So $2 million for a guy like Jake McCabe for the Toronto Maple Leafs is a no-brainer. And again, that's why it fetched the Blackhawks a first-round pick, albeit in 2025.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And packaging them together, I think, made Toronto a little more willing to cough up that first rounder, right? Because if you're trying to go, and Kyle, that's something Kyle Davidson even touched on, right? Because he thought about, sending guys separately in different deals, see what you can get there. But they said ultimately, to get the value that they wanted for it, the package deal was the way to go. That was kind of, not verbatim, but Kyle Davidson's gist when he was talking to reporters following the trade this morning here.